Hello and welcome to another episode of the Easy Relaxation Podcast. In this episode we're going to be doing an exercise that allows us to practice the way in which we can notice our emotions. So before we do that, it's important to remember that emotions form part of our life. And what this week's episode is about really is to think about how emotions can have an impact, for good or bad, on our flourishing. So I just clarify when I talk about flourishing what I mean. So when I think about flourishing, I also think about the Greek concepts going back to the early Greek philosophers of eudaimonia or eudaimonia, depending on how you pronounce it. And that's been translated a number of different ways. One is happiness, but I prefer to think of it as flourishing. And when I try and think about that, I think about the way that plants flourish. So the way in which a plant's flourishing is dependent on so much of its environment. The sort of things day to day that plant gets exposed to. And so when you think about human flourishing and the sort of things day to day that humans are exposed to, obviously one of those things is our emotions. So as part of any process to help with one's flourishing, and I think of relaxation and meditation as a major part of that, it's a good idea to practice some sort of emotional consciousness, bringing our attention onto our emotions so we can see how those emotions might help or hinder our flourishing. So this is what today's exercise is all about. It's about bringing our attention to our emotions and then gently letting go and seeing where that takes us. So first of all, and this is something we do every week, just get into a position where you feel comfortable. You can do this seated or lying down. Again, as I always remind you, make sure you keep your back as straight as possible. And it's important when you do that, it is a comfortable straightness. So you're not trying to overly strain yourself in keeping your back straight, but you're sort of getting into a position which is a comfortable straightness. Now, why is this important? Well, it's particularly important when you're sitting up. You want to make sure that your back is conducive to your breathing. So you're not slouching, you're not rolling your shoulders forward, you're not sitting in a position that pushes down on your stomach. And you'll nearly always find keeping your back comfortably straight is the best way to achieve that. So as we've done before, just adjust your position slightly as you need to make sure your back is comfortable. And now slowly bring your attention to how you feel. You might notice that currently it appears that you don't seem to have any feelings. But obviously we want to work with some sort of emotion. And when I'm talking about feeling here, I'm talking about how you feel emotionally. So you may notice that at the moment you do have a emotion that you can work with. But also you may feel fairly neutral. And just notice that feeling of neutrality, and just notice if that might be boredom. It might not be, but just notice that, because if it is boredom, then that in the area of meditation is often a good emotion to work with, particularly if you're trying to get to a point where you can meditate for long periods of time. So boredom is an emotion that we can work with in this exercise. But also, if you're not feeling any emotion and you're not feeling boredom, you might want to think of something you can work with. And so to do that, the best way is to bring to mind a situation in the past, or maybe an imaginary situation that hasn't occurred yet, which gives or imparts on you some sort of emotion. And I would probably pick a troublesome emotion. Because we're practicing letting go here, obviously those are the good ones to work with, to let go of. If you're feeling a deep sense of happiness currently, then that might not be something you want to let go of. So now, once you've had a chance to focus in on a particular emotion or select one through visualizing a situation or working with your boredom, try to identify in your body where that emotion is manifesting itself. So I'm just going to run through a few places where in my own work with this sort of exercise I've noticed my own emotion might be manifesting itself bodily, or might be associating itself. So you might find it's in your stomach. For me specifically, I sometimes find that it's roughly where the bottom of my rib cage is. For some people with certain emotions, it's around their their solar plexus. So that's, an inch or so above your belly button, probably at the centre of the bottom of your rib cage. Some people it's in the back of their head maybe, or their neck, or perhaps their back. I also find sometimes I've unintentionally clenched my hand in some way, maybe 2 fingers together, or all of my fingers. For other people, they might find that they're maybe scrunching their toes. Or maybe it's the forehead, or even the top of your scalp. So just identify where that emotion might be in your body. Now it's quite possible you can't place it anywhere in particular. Maybe it's just a general feeling throughout your whole body, or maybe it just feels elusive. But again, you can identify that, and that's the important thing. To help you, you might want to also think of particular words that might describe that feeling. Maybe you do feel it as tension or heat or some other word, like an uneasiness that I know we've spoken about in previous episodes. And what you want to do is just become familiar with that sensation and with that particular word. Now you've brought your attention fully to it, we want to gently let go. So let go of that sensation. Let go of that feeling. And if it helps, you can even visualize the word that you've used to classify it drifting away, dissolving away or flowing away. The idea ultimately is to get that sensation to gradually dissolve. So just let that feeling dissolve away. And then I want you to notice if the thought that was already there, or one that you've had to create for the purpose of this exercise, so whether that thought is still there. So, you've got rid of the sensation, the feeling, it's dissolved, but the thought still seems to be lingering. Now again, rather than pushing that away, let it drift away of its own accord. Let the thought drift away, so you're distancing yourself from it. Imagine it so that it's drifting away, so it's not part of you. Allow it to fade. Allow it to move away. And just take a moment to notice how that now feels. And I'm going to give you a couple of minutes now, just if you need more time to let the feelings dissolve, let the thoughts flow away or dissolve. Let yourself become distant from them. So we'll spend a couple of minutes now just relaxing gently into our flourishing. So now if you just gently bring your attention back to your surroundings, and you can just spend as long as you like to just reorientate yourself back into your environment. So thanks once again for listening. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye for now.